I'm fortunate enough to have worked with dozens of beginner CEOs over the years, and I want to share today the 5 biggest mistakes that I see of the first-time CEO. Okay, let's talk about mistake 1. That is tolerating mediocrity. This is having a bonsai version of success. I got to actually hear about that. The idea being that you accept mediocrity and you tolerate it. You think, oh, I'll deal with that later. That's okay, that's just good enough. I'm not going to deal with that now. You tolerate mediocrity, and before you know it, everything you're seeing around you is mediocre. From the very start, from the very get-go, you need to have a high bar and high standards and communicate that with the team around you. If you let things go from day one, recovering from that is much, much harder later on. Stop tolerating mediocrity. Stop tolerating bonsai success. Mistake number 2. This actually comes from a fantastic book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Temptations of a CEO. And this is one of the worst ones. This is harmony over conflict. And in reality, what that means is you seek harmony in terms of your top leadership team, in terms of the people around you, versus going to the conflict that you know needs to happen. That can surface itself in terms of, again, mediocre performance at that top table, where you'd much prefer people who are just getting on with each other than actually performing well. Incorrect decisions or decisions that instinctively don't feel right to you, but you let go. Again, relates back to tolerating mediocrity. But you look at harmony being more important to you than the actual reality of going through conflict so better work results by telling people this isn't good enough, by working with people who aren't getting on, by rather than trying to create harmony across everything that's there, you seek out the conflict, you deal with the conflict, and you move on to better things beyond that. Number 3, getting beaten up by the board. Typically, when you're in the C-suite, you don't often, or maybe you have limited exposure to the board of directors, maybe to the executive board. Sitting on that board are going to be investors, they're going to be people who are non-execs, they're going to be in a position where they are questioning you all the time. That's their job, right? Governance is their number 1. And the reality of that, and that can feel like often you see symptoms like over-preparing for a board, hundreds of slides before you go in. You spend most of your time as a CEO speaking and the board don't get a chance to speak. These are all symptoms of the board. And it feels like the board is checking your homework, right? They're looking at your numbers, they're being very critical of everything you're saying, because the relationship you have with them is effectively of them correcting your work or them looking for faults in the things that you're presenting to them. Resetting that relationship as a new CEO is really, really important. You are equals in terms of governance at that level. It's not about them versus you. The reality is this is about equality at that level. Your partners in running a business, treat them like partners. These are everybody's problems, not problems they're giving to you, everybody's problems in terms of the relationship. So you need to have a board of directors that treats you like a peer, and you need to treat them like peers as well. They have lots of ideas. You don't always have to take those ideas on, but you have to talk through the reality of why they're asking those things. Maybe they know something you don't know. They're not criticizing you or critiquing you. You're all working together for the right outcome. If the imbalance is there in terms of the board, that can be quite difficult for you because they can hold you back. You find yourself being anxious and worrying about the board 2 weeks before the board meeting comes, and they can feel like you're not listening to them, like you're not taking things on board, and that relationship can get quite hostile at points. It doesn't need to be like that. You need to be building a strong relationship with the individuals on the board as well as the board themselves. They are people, they are humans. Treat them like that, and they will treat you like that as well. Mistake number 4, thumb-sucking, hoping things will get better. So it's typical, again, if you're a first-time CEO, you're going to inherit great things from your predecessor, but you're also going to inherit a lot of crap. And it's tempting at that point just to go, oh, I'll deal with that in 6 months. So-and-so isn't performing on the senior leadership team. I'll give them another 6 months, and hopefully after those 6 months, they'll be better. And the dangerous word there is hope. And this is where thumb-sucking comes in. You spend your time hoping that an individual will get better. Maybe you'll have a quiet word with them. Maybe you'll see some slight improvement, but ultimately you won't be working on the challenge with that person. You won't be working on that particular challenge that's there. You need to run towards problems. Similar to conflict over harmony, running towards a problem is a surefire way of success. You know perfectly well, if you leave something and it's a little bit on fire, the more you leave it, the more on fire it's going to be. So stop running away from these challenges and hit them head on. Stop thumb-sucking and hoping things are going to get better, because they won't. You know that to be true. It's a natural human feeling to hope that things can get better. And hope is dangerous when there's no real outcome that you're not controlling at the end of it. Mistake number 5, This is trusting your intelligence over your ability to rely on the team around you. So typically you've probably come from finance, from commerce, from product, from technology. You've had quite a large team around you before that, and you're used to having and managing a large team. The thing you'll find when you're the CEO is suddenly you don't have a large team. You don't have a lot of brains to call on. You have your top team, who in essence are your team, but your resources are a lot more limited in terms of getting things done. So often that means you can overload yourself with things that you should be doing, like preparing board reports. It's very tempting for you to take a lot of things on, assuming you've got people to hand that stuff to, and you haven't. You need to give responsibility to the top team. Now, this is especially difficult if you've come from finance or sales or technology or product, because you're tempted to keep in that area, right? You've got a strong muscle in that area. So the temptation will be to stay there. Don't do that, okay? You need to move away from the area you've been in, unless there's a file, there's a challenge there. Be in that area by all means, but the reliance on other people to execute on the things that you say you're going to do. And that means building up other sets of skills like, ensuring accountability, because again, you haven't got a strong team around you. Maybe you have a COO, maybe you have a chief of staff, maybe you just have an assistant. Whatever it is, you've got a much more limited team in terms of the abilities of those around you. So you can't rely on your smarts, your insights, your ways of doing things to get things done. You have to give stuff to everybody else around you. Now, I know that sounds logical, but the reality is when you're in that position, it can feel very lonely at the top. And giving things to other people can feel quite difficult, especially if it's big things like strategy. The reality is you need to give things up. You don't have the ability to carry everything on your shoulders. It shouldn't be like that. In reality, for any CEO, you should have zero operational elements on your shoulders. It should all be strategic and dealing with things that aren't working, rather than having day-to-day responsibility on your shoulders. Now, if anything here resonates with you and you're feeling some of these mistakes might be happening to you, let's have a conversation. I'd love to chat through what your challenges are and where I can support you in terms of doing this. I offer an executive preview if you're a CEO. Get in touch. Let's talk through where some of these challenges are, because again, like I say, I've seen them many times. I've got a map to help you get out of these situations in a playbook so that you can feel a lot lighter and in control of the situation and in control of everything that's around you. Give me a call.